Now, to know more about the topic, we have UNDP Head of Financing for Development, Nila Murti. Thank you so much for being here, Nila. And now, probably this might be a new thing to discuss for people, well, let's say, dumb it down a bit. If we want to know, what is green bond or sukuk? Because it's kind of like new term for us.
Okay. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. So about the green bond or green sukuk, it's basically a debt instrument, but it's kind of innovative in a way because it's labeled in a green. So it's kind of specific to finance green project, environmental, climate-related projects. So it's kind of innovative of debt instrument basically. And green sukuk specifically because it's sukuk, so it's need to meet the Sharia requirements. So it needs to avoid any interest. So it has to be, the transaction need to be on an asset base, and then it's also apply a kind of ethical transactional as well, or investment as well.
And so, how have this instrument performed in global and domestic so far?
Yeah, I think it's a very good, it has been performed very well, both in global and domestic, because until now it has raised over than $9 billion to fund projects that are relevant to climate and also environment, such as renewable energy, sustainable transportation, waste management, infrastructures and others. So I think it's very relevant where, kind of the country raising this fund through green sukuk, and it's specifically directed to those projects that need it most, kind of, the green relevant projects. So it's kind of directly contribute to those green and climate actions.
And how has the market interest so far?
So I think the market responds very well. So if we are talking about the global market, about green sukuk, about green bonds, in 2024, it surpassed around $4 trillion. Quite big, right? And 70% of it dominated by green bond, basically. But if we are talking about domestic, it's a bit different. Kind of, we have total issuance like 498 billion for capital market is total issuance, but the thematic bonds, or what we call the green social sustainability bonds, it's only around 2 billion, and green bond, green sukuk, it's only 1 billion. So it's kind of small portions in a way, right? So it's kind of still an opportunity, big opportunity for the country, both government and also the private sectors, local government, to use this innovative financing to raise more capitals towards the priorities of green climate environmental projects.
And we were listening earlier about how Indonesia is very vulnerable to the climate change. What factors, in your opinion, would make Indonesia vulnerable for such things like climate change?
Okay, so first of all, that Indonesia is the largest archipelagic country, right? It has 17,000 islands, 81,000 kilometers of coastline, right? And we also have a very huge population, over than 270 million. And we have a vary of demography, topography, but we also still depending, most of our population still depending on a natural based kind of economy activities.
Agree.
So that's put us on risk, which include like floods, droughts, and then the rise of sea level. So it's kind of put us in a risk to be vulnerable for climate change impact, basically.
Because what you were saying earlier, basically, because of climate change, it could actually be affecting the welfare of our people as well.
Exactly, and also the other way around. Like, the way that we are still relying on the natural base economic activity. So it's kind of, exploiting the natural resources itself. So it can also kind of
both ways. Now, we are going back to green sukuk and green bonds. What role do these green bond and green sukuk play in addressing climate change. And also, you were talking as well about funding the projects for this far. What sectors or project can typically be funded through this instrument?
Okay. So I think this is a very relevant, and green bond, green sukuk can play a critical role for the country, specifically to raise more capital toward those green and eligible projects. Especially because Indonesia also committed to kind of reduce the GHG emissions, which also stated in the national determined contributions. That we have to reduce our GHG emissions by 2030 around, 31.89% unconditionally and 43.2% conditionally. So we need like more resources, if we are talking about financing, the requirements to finance those projects that can contribute to the GHG emission reduction is maybe around more than 500 million, more than 500 million US dollar, or around 3,000 trillion.
Yeah.
And if we rely on the government state budget only, I don't think that it will be that the gap can be wider. So the green sukuk, green bond, it's an opportunity for us to kind of direct the capital raise to those specific projects that can or directly relevant to the climate actions activities.
Can we see any impact of the issuances of green sukuk in Indonesia so far?
Yes. Okay. So basically, the use of proceeds from the green sukuk issuance was used to finance eligible projects like renewable energy, energy efficiency, building, waste management infrastructure. So the impact is estimated that until now it has contributed to reduce around 10.5 million GHG emission, CO2 emission. So and then we also support from the green sukuk. It's also construct over 690 kilometers of railway tracks and improve solid waste management, and also benefiting millions of people from those constructions.
But in the journey of saving our environment with the instrument of green bonds and green sukuk as well, what are the opportunities and also the challenges for green bonds or green sukuk in Indonesia? And now let's go back to the role of UNDP in promoting the growth of these instruments.
Okay, so I think this is very relevant questions because the opportunity is, again, I think we need to come back to the problem itself, the financing gap to meet the climate commitment and also to meet the sustainable development goals target by 2030. So based on the updated roadmap issued by Bappenas, the financing required for the SDGs is around 8.7 trillion US dollar. So it's a huge,
That's
right?
huge, yeah.
Yes,
Quite a number.
And then, as I mentioned, to achieve the climate ambition is also require 566 million US dollars. So it's also a financing gap. So the use of these thematic instruments, kind of innovative instruments through the debt thematic bonds, I think it's a very good opportunity to kind of raise more financing to meet the financial gaps, to fill the financial gaps. So basically, this is green sukuk is one of the innovative instruments. We also have kind of other innovative instruments, kind of like sustainability linked sukuk or sustainability linked bond, which tie the issuers to kind of performance indicators. So it's a good opportunity if we can use these innovative instruments to finance, the government priorities or maybe the private sector priorities. As I mentioned before, the green sukuk or the thematic bond in market overall dominated by government still. So it's also an opportunity for the private sectors to issue more thematic bonds. But in terms of challenges, of course, we still have challenges. As I mentioned, that we still lack of issuance of thematic bonds. So I think first, because of the lack of awareness, both the issuers and also investor on this, the lack of technical expertise, because issuing a thematic bond requires like several steps in addition to kind of the conventional or vanilla bond issuance. So we need to have a framework, and then we need to report the bond issuance, you know, the proceeds, the use of proceeds as an impact report.
Yeah.
So it's a kind of responsibility to the investor that, you know, we've been using your money for this kind of projects, right? So because it is require an additional effort, that's why UNDP stepped in to provide support to the government through the Ministry of Finance. So we've been very honored to work with the Ministry of Finance in supporting these thematic bonds issuance, green sukuk, SDG bond, blue bond. So UNDP has been providing technical assistance as well as capacity building, strengthening the capacity, again, because this is required more effort, right? And then we also do advocacy about this thematic bond, importance of, you know, the innovative financing instruments and how this can be useful for the country to meet the ambitions on climate and also SDGs. So that will be it, the role of UNDP.
Interesting, but still a long way to go. So that's why we might need the help from our audiences. As you were mentioning, the challenges would be the awareness. So I hope this could help to raise more awareness to people of green sukuk and green bonds. So UNDP's Head of Financing for Development, Nila Murti, thank you so much for being here in See Today Business. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So that was our conversation on green bond or sukuk for today's Business Talk. You can stay connected with us on Instagram, X, and YouTube. Our handles are @CTodayNews. We are also available online at ctodaynews.com.